Hello, I'm Dr. Celtic and welcome to this special collaboration between me and Ezra Reeds. Thank you, Ezra, for being able to allow me to be part of another special collaboration with you. So, before I begin, sit back, relax, and listen. The Monster in the Woods. Written and attributed to Lone Donut. I had been running for hours, the sun having set long ago. The moon was now glistening above the treetops, its silver rays beaming through the leaves. It still gave little light to the dark forest, and I was blindly dashing through branches and bushes. Dead leaves and fallen branches crunched under my boots, and a few times my feet would stumble over a fallen log or a hidden hole. But on I ran, because every time I showed any sign of stopping or slowing, I heard it. It was lumbering after me, tearing its way through the trees in its pursuit. So I couldn't stop. I couldn't slow, because then it would be upon me. I had been running for so long that my body felt numb. My lungs no longer burned for air, and my legs no longer pulsed with energy. I had passed the point of exhaustion, and pure fear-induced adrenaline is what kept my body moving. I didn't know where I was running, or what lay ahead of me in the shadows of the forest. My sight was useless, and I could navigate only with touch. The blackness of the woods was swallowing, and every tree, log, branch, and hole I crashed into was only discovered by the touch of my hands. The thing had wandered into my camp just before dusk, and we had sat watching each other. I think it was startled just as much as I was, and our eyes were locked in a stunning embrace. Then it screamed. I took off running in the direction of what I thought was the road. I didn't like that hike that deep into the woods. Out of inexperience and the fear of getting lost. Well, that happened anyway. The creature had ignored the raw beef that I had left beside the campfire, and its focus was squarely on me. What could be fresher than meat that still had blood pumping through it? So it chased after me, grunting and snorting as it did. I was sure I had twisted both of my ankles, and I'm sure any bare skin exposed was covered in cuts and bruises. But on I went, the horror behind me being enough to keep me going. It's when the ground disappeared below me that I finally stopped. I fell into the darkness and didn't feel it when I collided with the earth. Birds were singing somewhere above me, and sunlight shone its way through my eyelids. I awoke at the bottom of a small creek bed, the water barely a trickle. The sky above me was clear of clouds, and the brilliant sun cast its warming glow over my cheeks. I lay there for some time, feeling the warm rays upon my skin. Then the horror of the previous night invaded my tranquility. I sat up with a start and immediately vomited from the motion. My head spun from the sudden movement, and it hurt to breathe. As the world danced around me, I admired the purple swollen stubs at the end of my legs, my ankles so bruised that I was sure it would be impossible to take my shoes off. My legs were littered in deep gashes and cuts, and dark yellow bruises coated any area not covered in blood. While my body fought back, I forced myself to turn my head and look around. The ditch I was in was a tight one, and I'm sure it was nearly impossible to see even in the daytime. No one walking nearby would even know I was here, and even if I could scream, I'm sure no one was around to hear it. I collapsed back into the rocks and mud, closing my eyes and breathing slowly. Every inch of my body hurt, and I had the depressing feeling that I was going to die out here. I couldn't walk, my arms were too battered to crawl, and my throat was too sore to cry for help. I was alone in the woods, and no one would ever find me. My eyes flew open as I heard a twig snap from somewhere overhead. Something was getting closer, and it was large. I could hear it snapping branches and logs as it approached. I could hear it grunting and snorting. It was back. The thing from last night was back. I could feel my eyes start to water, and my racing heart pounded against my ribcage. A silent scream escaped my lips as a large dark shadow creeped over me. I tried to crawl away, but my arms were too weak. All I succeeded in doing was leaving claw marks from my hands in the mud. This was it. I was going to die in more pain than I was already in. "What? Are you okay?" a man's voice said from above me, and I could feel small pebbles bounce off my head and shoulders. The man carefully manoeuvred down the side of the pit and knelt beside me. He had a bushy brown beard and kind brown eyes. He wore a black knitted beanie and a green plaid shirt. He surveyed my damaged body and let out a sharp whistle. "You've been through hell, haven't you, kid?" he mumbled, stroking his beard in thought. My tears of horror had turned to tears of relief as I gazed up at my saviour. This man was probably the most beautiful man I had ever seen, and I wished I could thank him. But my mouth gaped like a fish, moving open and shut with no sound escaping. "Take it easy, buddy. You're with me now. Everything is going to be alright." I saw a flash of something dark come over the man's eyes, and his lips curled into a wide, toothy smile. "You're with me now," he said again, as his hand reached up and wrapped around my throat.
It was the summer of 2017. I was a junior in high school. I had multiple groups of friends that I would float around in, with one group which was 3 females and another male, that was particularly into urban exploration and photographing the places they would visit. I expressed some interest in accompanying them on their next adventure, and they suggested the abandoned factory that was in our town. Once the lifeline of our small medium town, the factory suffered multiple fires until it was eventually abandoned, left as a 20-story eyesore, but was unable to be destroyed due to the amount of asbestos that would be released into the air. This building attracted flocks of adventurous students and urban explorers from all over, and obviously with no maintenance and structural damage after the fire. There were some pretty serious injuries on the property. The city ended up hiring a private security company to keep out the explorers, but the premises were so big it was hard for the guards to spot small groups of people scurrying into the factory and disappearing in the darkness. My group was fairly experienced and knew a route to avoid the patrols effectively. We embarked on our adventure a little after midnight and parked about half a mile from the factory and snuck in through a hole in the fence cut by past explorers. We followed a ditch, kind of like a trench, through the big open field that led to the factory. We narrowly missed multiple spotlights scanning the field, having to crouch to hide our silhouette completely in the shallow ditch. We finally make it to the building and make our entry through a section of wall that had collapsed. Every little piece of rubble that was disturbed by us would send out clouds of asbestos-laden dust. Every little piece of rubble that was disturbed by us would send out clouds of asbestos-laced dust. And I seemed to be the only one that cared, so I kept that thought to myself and tried to enjoy the experience. We had red-tinted flashlights that were supposed to be harder to see from far away, that we used to illuminate our path as we wandered deeper into the concrete jungle. Abandoned machinery, graffiti, and rubble littered the ground, and my friends were quick to begin taking photos of the surroundings. They seemed very familiar with the area and started splitting up unintentionally, and myself taking care to be near at least one other person that can lead me out if we have to run. We got very split up at one point. It was just myself and a female, let's call her Mary, on one of the higher floors. We climbed out of a broken window onto a flat part, not quite at the top, but very high off the ground, about 18 stories high. She pulled out a can of spray paint and let me tag my initials onto a wall. And we took turns doing a small photo shoot of each other. We also became aware of other groups that were present at this time, as we saw flashlights with white lights through the windows from our high vantage. This ended up giving us away as we heard a security truck come up the road and started shining a powerful spotlight through the windows. The relative peace was broken by dozens of feet shuffling on dusty concrete floors, as multiple groups scrambled to make their escape. Mary and I had a chuckle as we listened to the panicked footsteps below us, and commented on how weird it was how many were inside, and we didn't even know. I would have panicked and ran myself, but Mary knew better and said the guards don't usually come in, and would be distracted chasing all the runners, and we could just stroll out in a few minutes. The truck roared off, chasing away explorers, when Mary and I finally started making our way down, carefully through the rubble. During the escape, one of the groups must have broke the sketchy, rusted-out metal staircase we took to get up, so we had to find another way down. It was at this point we checked our phones for any updates on our group, and with no texts, we figured they had made the dash to the exit during the initial panic and were still running. This group had multiple contingencies for exploring and would not leave anyone behind, so we were not concerned about that. While we were wandering around looking for a safe way down, we noticed a red glow in one of the rooms. Concerned it was one of us in there, with our red-tinted flashlight, possibly hurt, we quickly moved toward the room to investigate. I felt my stomach sink when I saw every inch of the walls in that room covered with demonic graffiti and writings, with satanic paraphernalia littered on the ground. We saw everything from severely abused voodoo dolls to half-burnt Ouija boards, half-lit candles and pentagrams. I looked to Marie for comfort, and she was just as horrified with her hand covering her mouth. Sensing her distress, I tried to play it off, like this was the work of some pranksters, leaving this here to scare others, and noting out loud how cliché this all was, especially since we were on the 13th floor and all. She seemed to lighten up a bit from my thoughts, but regardless, there was no denying how uncomfortable we were there. We also could not determine what the source of the red light was. It just seemed to illuminate the room very weakly from an unknown location. We decided to leave, but not to run, as we did not want to lose each other or risk getting hurt. As we exited, I felt my foot hit something soft, and it skidded across the floor. Both of our flashlights illuminated the object, and a cold chill racked down my entire body when we saw the decapitated head of a goat that I had just punted across the floor. I tend to talk a lot when I am scared and try to turn it into humor, so I just narrated what was going on in a goofy way to stop from full-blown panicking at that point. Mary held my hand as I led the way back, deciding to go and try out the sketchy staircase that we had passed earlier, in favor for a safer way down. I offered to go first to test it, to make sure it would hold my weight, as I was much bigger than Marie. The second to last step fell under my weight, and I sprained my foot from the unexpected drop. As I removed my leg from what used to be a step, I cut it pretty deep on the sharp metal left behind. But I hardly even felt any pain at the time. Mary followed me down, carefully testing her weight on each step before committing to it, and just jumping from about 6 to 7 steps up to avoid a similar fate to mine. After getting off the 13th floor, I felt a little better, but the fear was still very present, with the long way to go to the exit. I hobbled ahead of Mary, holding hands again to avoid separating, but the way became a bit clearer now as we found the path we came up. We were at about the 4th floor when we began hearing shuffling and footsteps above us, where we just were a couple floors up. In the mental state we were in, this terrified us, and it took everything in me not to break into a full sprint. As we neared the exit, the footsteps got closer and closer until they were on the floor directly above us. We were basically fast walking as quickly as we could, and as soon as we cleared the collapsed wall that led us outside, we let go of each other's hands and sprinted towards the car. Luckily, security was not around to give us problems, as they were likely still busy chasing off the first runners. Even with the shape my leg was in, I made it through the hole in the fence first, and waited the couple seconds Marie took to get through. As I waited, I glanced at the factory and saw over a dozen silhouettes standing on the flat part that we were just on a few minutes ago. They could have been other explorers like us, but this just creeped me the hell out. Why didn't they run like everyone else? If they were waiting it out like us, by now the guards are probably getting back into their regular patrols. So why wait that long? Mary ducked through the hole and looked back at me, following my gaze to the shadows on the roof, and became visibly disturbed. They weren't moving. They weren't showing any body language to suggest they were interacting with each other. They were just standing there. I became disturbed by the idea they could be staring at us too. So I quickly grabbed Marie's hand and resumed our fast walk toward the car. We got to the car to the greetings of all of our excited friends, still pumped with adrenaline after running and giddily sharing funny personal accounts of what happened. They grilled us on how we got out, and the story we gave them obviously was not what they were hoping for, and got blown off immediately, suggesting we took a little extra time to go make out or something. They wanted us to go back with them and show them the room, but Marie and I said there is no way in hell we are going back, at least not tonight, and blamed it on my ankle that was now throbbing and swollen to almost twice its normal size. Urban exploring never caught on for me, especially after my first experience, and Marie refused to ever visit the factory again. We described the room to our friends and told them to go check it out, but they were never able to find it, despite multiple attempts. I kind of grew apart from the group over the years, and found my own other little group of friends, but I occasionally talked to Marie about our experience that night. Apparently our story got around, and it became a popular task for explorers to attempt to find the now nicknamed Red Room. As far as we know, nobody has been able to find it after us.
I would like to give special thanks to my fellow narrator and friend, Dr. Celtic. His channel will be linked below in the description, so please show him the appreciation he deserves. Till next time, farewell.